Hello and welcome to the all-new, all-different number one comics podcast, issue number 93. Bob, volume 1, issue number 93, might I add. I'm Dan, that's Bob. Say hello, Bob.
Hello, Bob.
We are a weekly comic book podcast where each and every episode we review a brand new first issue comic book, break down the story and art, give it someone to review, and let you know if we think you should move on to issue number 2 or not. We also talk about comic book news. Bob, this is going to be a mini episode this week. It's a little late in the week. We just read a really cool comic, so we want to talk about it. But we'll hit some news, and then we'll talk about the comic we're talking about. And like I said, we'll do our first mini episode. It'll be fun, keep it nice and tight, maybe like 30 minutes or less. Bob, what comic book are we covering this week?
From DC Comics, we are covering Absolute Wonder Woman number 1.
Absolute Wonder Woman, absolutely Wonder Woman, issue number 1. Stoked to talk about this one. I guess we'll take a very quick pause and we'll be back to talk about comic book news, and then we'll talk about the book. Hey, and welcome back to the all-new, all-different number one comics podcast, issue number 93. Bob, it's time to talk about comic book news. There's a little bit of news this week, not like a whole lot, not anything earth-shattering, but of course we do know that... I guess first off, let me say that some sad news, and Bob, you brought this to my attention. This is your news. I'm stealing your thunder here, but
yes,
the Blade movie again delayed, but with no release date. So delayed, I don't know, indefinitely.
Well, I have heard recently today, I have read that it's on schedule to start filming as early as next year. So it
if that happens or not, yeah.
Yes, it does sound like at this point it's still happening, barring they don't lose another director.
So I heard some different things about this because, up until this point, I haven't really dug much into the topic of why it keeps getting delayed and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I know we've lost directors and writers and all of those things, but for one, I've heard that, and this is all speculative, this is stuff I'm hearing from unverified sources, so who knows, but I'm hearing that Mahershala Ali is very hard to work with. I don't know if you've ever heard that anywhere. Yeah.
I have not heard that, no.
Yeah, this is my first time hearing that, so... I'm not sure how true that is, but apparently from this source, he's hard to work with. And I'm also hearing that with the Deadpool Wolverine movie that just came out a little while ago, that there's like renewed interest in having like an elderly Blade, keeping the same Blade. So I don't know. Thoughts on that?
Of course, coming off Deadpool and Wolverine, as successful as that was in the, reaction to finally seeing Wesley Snipes back as Blade, I would think that talk would come up.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say that, I'd necessarily want another Blade movie, especially, a Logan-style Blade movie, like an old man Blade.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Personally, I'd like to see a younger version, and I definitely would want to see what Ali's version of Blade is, because I think he could do a good job. He's a really good actor, but at this point, who knows if it's even going to get made.
Yeah, it seems like super weird, doesn't it? I mean, I think he did a great job in Deadpool Wolverine. I really liked his performance there. But it's almost like, would you want to see like Ben Affleck come back as Daredevil at this point? It's so far removed and so long ago.
Right.
It was, I had a great time with the Blade movies, and I had a great time even with Daredevil, with Ben Affleck playing Daredevil. But, it's just like, do we need any more of that? So much time has passed, and everything. It's time for a young, new outlook on the character.
Well, I mean, arguably, you could say without the Blade movie, there may be no MCU because, Blade showed, granted that was New Line Cinema, but the Blade movie showed that superhero movies could work again. Because there hadn't really been a good superhero movie since Batman Returns.
Yeah, pretty much at that point. Yeah, there wasn't really anything that I can think of that was as successful as something like Blade coming out. And just to go back to that, just to paint that landscape for how that was back then. I'm trying to think of the exact year that the first Blade movie came out.
98.
Okay.
Yeah, 98.
Yeah, so it's 1998, and we've got Wesley Snipes, and of course Wesley Snipes, a great actor, of course, but had some stuff going on a little while after that. But Wesley Snipes, Stephen Dorff, Chris Christopherson, and this movie comes out, and it's. I think that 98, we still had like a good amount of like vampire movies like that. Vampires have always been in popular culture, as far as like movies and horror movies and all of that. They don't really go out of fashion. This was obviously before the big boom with like Twilight and stuff like that came much later. But, for this being a comic book character and a relatively unknown comic book character, like you were saying,
right.
Of course we had adaptations of Batman, Superman, stuff like that, but definitely not somebody as small as Blade. I mean, I guess I can't say that. We did have stuff like Meteor Man, whatever, but, the Crow and stuff like that. But
I mean, unlike because Batman and Superman are A-listers. At the time, what would you have considered the character of Blade?
D-list at best. All I thought of Blade, was like. Really, I guess at that point in time, back in the late 90s, I wasn't really thinking anything about those Marvel horror characters. They were just and Tomb of Dracula and stuff like that, books that I never read. Horror books were,
right.
And they were well written with some really good art and stuff, but it just wasn't anything I was reading at the time. So,
right.
Really, really cool. And this was just a really cool movie that kind of came out of nowhere and did pretty well. Had a good cult following and all of that. The box office was number one with 17.1 million across 2,322 screens. And it was like the top film of the box office until Something About Mary came out. So, that just shows you the caliber, of that. And of course, you go back and look at something like Rotten Tomatoes and it's pretty low. It's got like a 58%, but we all know how
that's to be expected.
Everybody knows how you and I feel about something like Rotten Tomatoes. It's whatever.
Right.
All that's
right.
a complete grain of salt. But.
Especially commercially, that movie had and still has one of the best character introductions ever. Just that opening scene of Blade in the nightclub.
Oh, with all the blood. Yeah. Oh, such a great. I love this movie. I'm not gonna lie. It's a really, really good movie. It's super rewatchable, and it spawned 2 sequels and a TV series. So, things that are much more critically acclaimed, that have tried to do sequels and stuff like that have failed, much more than this has. So either way, I think it was a place in time, and it was really cool and all of that. I don't think that, I don't know. I wish we could live in 2 different universes, one where they just move forward with the Mahershala Ali film and go ahead and make that and it comes out, and then one where they do like an Old Man Blade with Wesley Snipes, because I think they're both really interesting. I think that it would be cool either way. I'd like to see both of them, but I don't think that's an option that we'll get. But like we said, it's been delayed again, but maybe that's a good thing. Maybe they're putting more focus into
Possibly.
it. Maybe they're going to start filming next year. I don't know. I guess we're not going to put too many eggs in one basket here because we don't know exactly what's going on. But that is always worth touching on because who knows what's going to happen. So, our next piece of news, Bob, we've got a writer, producer, and showrunner for the Amazon God of War series. I've never played God of War. I've never read God of War comics. There are Wildstorm comics from 2010. Not anything I've ever been into. I'm not sure about you.
No, I mean, I kind of dabbled around with the God of War reboot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I kind of say reboot. That came out for, what was it, the PlayStation a few years back, the original God of War. But I mean, that's about it. I've got a really good buddy of mine who's a big God of War fan. He's been playing it since the OG PlayStation days. I just never really got into it. I mean, it's a cool looking game. I mean, I like the whole pantheon of gods and how he's trying to get revenge, and it's just a beat 'em up game with gods. So yeah, I mean it's a cool concept, but
I was gonna say it's a nice concept, but yeah, I mean, I don't know much about it, but good on them. Hopefully that does well. We're getting it's almost like and we've talked about this before, but it's like we're really starting to get into the era of the video game movie. They're really starting to look at a lot of those properties and produce some stuff like they were with comic books, a little while ago. So we'll see what happens. We end up with lots of different things, but
they've come a long way since Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Bob, speaking of Bob, Bob, according to Film TV Industry Alliance, a Sergeant Rock film is set to begin shooting in London in January 2025 with James Gunn and a whole bunch of people as producers, but there's no official announcement yet. So we'll see if anything comes of that. Bob, here's a big one. Of course, we knew this would happen, but Spider-Man 4 is set to premiere in theaters July 24th, 2026.
That's definitely not shocking after the success of No Way Home.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And my last little bit of news, unless you have anything you want to jump on, is, Bob, we have a official Phase 6 announcement. Now, this is but this is not from, this hasn't broken in like every credible source yet, so I guess take it with a grain of salt, but they are saying that this is an official announcement from Marvel, and it is Phase 6. What we can expect is Fantastic Four First Steps, July 25th of 2025. Untitled Marvel movie, February 13th, 2026. Any guesses, Bob, what that might be? That's a day before Valentine's Day, so
for Phase 6.
Will it be a Gambit Rogue movie? Could be.
Well, I don't think they. Are they saving the X-Men for 7?
I mean,
have they said that?
They haven't said. I don't think there's any word on any X-Men.
Squirrel
official
Girl.
word. Ooh, man, I hope so. That'd be rad. We were supposed to get the Squirrel Girl movie or appearance or something, and it was, I can't remember the actress's name, but she was the one that played in AT&T commercials. I'll have to look it up, but yeah, that was a thing. I remember. I believe she was actually cast.
Yeah, she AT&T commercials, and I think she acted in Mad Men.
Oh yeah, that would make sense. Yeah, super cool.
So yeah, I know who you're talking about. I don't know if she is of Russian descent, but her last name is kind of, Russian sounding
Mm.
or Middle Eastern sounding. So,
Bob, we've got Avengers Doomsday, May 1st, 2026. We've got Spider-Man 4, July 26th, 2026. We've got another untitled Marvel movie, November 6th, 2026. So they're like packing out 2026. It looks like. I mean, I guess it's just 4 movies, but still, it's just looking cool. And then of course, May 7th, 2027, Avengers: Secret Wars. And as we know, coming up next year. Sorry, these were a little bit out of order. Captain America: Brave New World, February 14th, and Thunderbolts on May 2nd. So. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't know how credible this site is. This is gamingbible.com. Maybe it's not credible. I don't know. It was published today, though, at around 1:30, that Marvel officially announces Phase 6 movies, 6 movies for Phase 6. So I don't know. Take it with a grain of salt, I guess. We'll see if there's if it's announced anywhere else. But yeah, that's what we got for now. Bob, any news that you wanted to jump on?
No, I have none.
Cool. Then we'll take our midway break and we'll be right back to talk about Absolute Wonder Woman. Hey, and welcome back to the all-new, all-different #1 Comics Podcast, issue number 93. Bob, it's time to talk all about Absolute Wonder Woman, the new book from DC Comics. Of course, this is part of DC's All In initiative, their newest, line of whatever you want to call this. I don't know exactly what to call the All In or Absolute branding, but it's a different look at the characters. I don't know if I could find a something that explained more about the Absolute stuff, I would. But, I feel like if you're listening to this podcast, you probably already understand what that is.
Right.
Yeah, basically we're taking a different look at our, some of our favorite characters. Of course, we had one a couple of weeks ago with Batman. Now we've got Wonder Woman, and there's a Superman coming as well. Different origin, for these characters. It's pretty much like, I don't know. It's not Elseworlds, but it's DC's equivalent to Marvel's Ultimate line is basically what we're going to say.
Yeah.
So
from everything I've heard, that's what it is.
Yeah, that's pretty much how you could describe it to somebody. So, Bob, in Absolute Wonder Woman, look, the synopsis is going to be real easy on this one because it's basically a sentence from DC. They're not. It's not a paragraph or anything. It's pretty light. Absolute Wonder Woman, without the island paradise, without the sisterhood that shaped her, without a mission of peace, what's left is the absolute Amazon. So that's our synopsis. That's our tagline for the book there. Yeah. They're going pretty metal with this. I'm not going to lie. This is really cool and interesting. I'm going to jump over to the creators just for a sec. Of course, Bob, this is one of our favorite writers of all time. So,
yeah,
anytime we get to talk about Kelly Thompson, I think it's a good conversation. Kelly Thompson, you guys know Kelly Thompson. She is a comic book writer, and she worked a whole bunch on Captain Marvel. That's her her big title she did for years over at Marvel Comics. She also wrote the amazing IDW series Gem and the Holograms, which is, Bob, it's one of my favorite books. Every time we talk about Kelly Thompson, I bring that book up because it's so good. One day I want you to borrow this hardcover that I have. I think you should read it. It's so good. She did a whole bunch of work on Jeff the Land Shark, an Infinity comic for Jeff the Shark. She's worked on Amazing Spider-Man, Birds of Prey, one of Bob's favorite DC books currently.
Oh, yes.
Some really, really good work on Black Widow as well as Hawkeye, Mr. and Mrs. X over at Marvel, Deadpool, Bob, Black Cloak, going all the way back. Look, we're on episode 93, going all the way back to episode number 1, Black Cloak. So our first episode was on a Kelly Thompson book, which is so super cool. So it's almost like anytime we can bring up Kelly Thompson, like it's like this weird wave of like, man, that's where we started. We started with Kelly Thompson. So that's really cool. West Coast Avengers, a big run on that. Uncanny X-Men, A-Force, Jessica Jones, Heart in a Box, Star, Nancy Drew, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, Bob the Cull, one of my favorite books from last year. She was the writer on that. And yeah, man, the list goes on and on and on. I could sit here all day and talk about how cool Kelly Thompson is. She's just super cool, man. She's done some really awesome stuff, and I love her work. For art, we've got Hayden Sherman. And Hayden worked on Wasted Space, on Detective Comics, on Dark Spaces Dungeon. That is a cool book. Above Snakes, Batman Urban Legend, Batman The Adventures Continue, Season 3. The Few, Dark Spaces Wildfire, Blink, Cold War, Mary Shelley, Monster Hunter, Thumbs, if you remember that book, John Carter, The End, Chicken Devil, Into the Unbeing. Again, this is a very storied creator, so the list goes on and on there too. And I just want to shout out our colorist and letterer really quick too. We've got Jordi Belair. Everybody knows who Jordi Belair is. If you read comics, you have seen Jordi Belair be an amazing color artist on all of it. So shout out to Jordi. And then we've got letters by Becca Carey. So
this is a very good creative team.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like if you put those four together, you can't really like it. It seems like it would be impossible to come up with something that's not like super intriguing, you know? Like, I mean, I don't know. I feel like DC could have just been like, you know, instead of giving them the absolute line or something like that, they could have said, I don't know, write a story about like a crack in the sidewalk, and it would be like a compelling story, you know, and look really good, and it would be cool. So, yeah, I can't imagine that any of those people could fail us. So that's really good. Bob, let's go to my synopsis really quick, and I'll try to make it quick. It's kind of long as usual. Absolute Wonder Woman opens with a reporter and cameraman reporting after an unknown hovering inverse pyramid appears in Gateway City, California. Suddenly, red flying demons, I wrote this part first, but they are harbingers, it appears is like what they're being called here. So I'll take a step back and saying, suddenly harbingers burst out and began wreaking havoc on the city. Just then, Absolute Wonder Woman shows up and begins taking them down with her giant sword. We then flash back to years ago in the Wild Isle of Hell, prison of the great sorceress Circe. She's in prison there alone, and Apollo comes to visit her and brings her a baby. Of course, the baby is Diana, princess of the Mascara, and the last of the Amazons. Zeus took Diana as punishment against the Amazons' crimes, against the gods, and now he's leaving her there in hell with Circe. He bans the word Amazon, and Circe is reluctant to take care of Diana. As time passes, Circe lets Diana take care of herself, and Diana does. And in one scene, Diana yeets an entire hell snake far, far away. And the reason I say yeets is because the actual, onomatopoeia there is yeet. So I'm not just trying to be cool and hip. That's what happens in the book there. Then much time passes, and Circe becomes very fond of Diana and raises her as her own child. We flash back over to Gateway City now, and Diana tells soldiers to evacuate all the citizens within a mile and to bring their army. Diana fights off a giant harbinger demon, and her Pegasus comes to her rescue. And then the harbingers rise, and the giant one uses his laser eyes to fight Diana. Flashback to Diana with Circe's. She teaches Diana to say the word Amazon, which has been banned, and Diana says the word and realizes it gives her great strength and power. We move back over to current day. Diana is fighting the lead harbinger, and she becomes enlightened with some super cool hell powers as the issue ends. So that is kind of what happens there. It's a little hard to describe, like, in words. Definitely a very visual book, that is for sure.
Yep.
Let's get into this thing, Bob. Again, we're on our mini episode, so we can hit the points we need to hit. But yeah, man, this one is wow. This is such a cool book. I really, really actually liked this a lot. Obviously we're going to get into our thoughts and everything, but wow, this is a cool book. How did you feel about the story beats?
I like the story beats. I mean, of course they did that whole thing, which, a lot of comics do, that could be a good trope. It could be a bad trope of starting out in present day and then going to a flashback and then coming back to present day. Done, not done well. I mean, that could definitely slow down a book, but here it was done well enough, and it wasn't bogged down by so much dialogue and exposition that it slowed down the beats. So, I mean, for me, the beats flowed smoothly.
Yeah, and I'm gonna echo that for a second and elaborate like a little bit more too, because like you said, that's like kind of like a trope in storytelling, not just comics, but in storytelling altogether, and especially in comics. Like a lot of times, like in a first issue and stuff, and as like a mini series is unfolding and things like that, we'll always see present day and we'll flash back and get some backstory and all that. It's just a way to tell a story or whatever. But it depends on who you have telling the story. That's a tool to tell a story with. But you have somebody like Kelly Thompson telling the story that way, and just I don't know, man. Like Kelly Thompson just really delivers. She really breaks it up like in a really cool way. I really like how we're cut in the middle of the action there, and there's not really a slow moment in this book at all, like not a second of it. And
no, there really isn't.
Even cutting and flashing back to Diana's origin there on Hell and everything, and it was done so well. It was done so comfortably, and like it just read so easy. And this is a 30-pager. It feels like it's like 5 pages. I would like. It's definitely one of those books, man. Like the second I got to the end, I was like, "Damn it, no! I don't want to wait till the next issue." But
I was gonna say it definitely didn't feel like a 30-pager.
No, it read so well. Which I mean, that just we've covered somebody like Kelly Thompson so many times, and we've read so much Kelly Thompson stuff, and we're both big fans. So like we know what to expect with her work, but it's just like every time I read a Kelly Thompson book, I'm just like, man, she really knows how to craft a story and how to end that self-contained like single issue comic book and then make me say like, no, I don't want it to be over yet. Like she's so good at that. She's really good at her cliffhangers and everything. So yeah, I love the beats in this. How about the dialogue? We got a new Wonder Woman. She's different than our old Wonder Woman, but kind of the same, but kind of not. We have some characters you're familiar with, Cersei, and I mean, I guess that's really it. That's the only 2 characters, maybe Apollo or whatever. But that's really all. How did you feel about the voices here, the dialogue?
The voices, I'm not going to say it's, kind of tough because there isn't a whole lot of dialogue. Of course, I mean, there isn't exactly a whole lot of characters in this book. But, the dialogue, I could definitely see, I'm not greatly familiar with the character of Cersei, which I'm pretty sure you aren't either. But
a little bit, but I mean, yeah, a little bit.
But from the little bit I know, her, basically back talking to Apollo, I could see, Cersei saying that, and I could definitely see. Of course, this is a new version of Wonder Woman, but I could definitely see, Wonder Woman. I mean, she's her dialogue is written to make her seem strong.
Yeah, man, and she is strong. Like I'm not gonna say she doesn't have any vulnerability. Sorry, I was trying to conjure up that word out of nowhere. But, it's not that she doesn't have any vulnerabilities. Of course, it looks like that lead harbinger is kind of getting the best of her for a minute there before Pegasus jumps in. But but her confidence is still like through the roof, and she's still, when she flips like that to, use that hell power or whatever that saying, thinking Amazon, whatever it is, whatever that power that she has is really cool, and she's just really, really powerful, and that really shows. I think it shows through the dialogue too. It shows through the entire story, through the art, through the dialogue, all of that stuff. I'm running a little long-winded here, and I'm going to try to speed up a little bit more because we have a little bit more to get through, and we want to make this a mini episode. But the narrative of the book, Bob, I'm going to say this. We kind of talked about it in the beats, but like the narrative structure of this, I really appreciate. Again, it could be, if done wrong, it could be very tropey. We just have, our action and everything happening. We're flashing back to like the origin of the character. I think the narrative structure of this book just works so good. I really enjoyed reading it. It was such an easy read to just breeze through. And like I said, I was pissed when it ended. So how's narrative for you?
And it's funny because I'm sure you picked up on this too, but this goes with the narrative. But it was weird reading a Wonder Woman book, but so much of it was devoted to like a mother-daughter relationship.
Oh yeah.
When Apollo first brought, infant Diana to the Island of Hell, I'm going to call it the Island of Hell. I believe it has another name, but I can't pronounce it.
The Isle of Hell.
When he brings her to the Isle of Hell, Cersei doesn't want her. Cersei
not at all.
that, nature is going to run its course, and nature will, just do it for her. And she sees the strength in Diana by infant Diana throwing the snake.
Yeeting, Bob. Yeeting the snake. Don't forget, you got to be hip.
Yeeting. I'm sorry. That's too hip a word for me. But just over time, from panel to panel, you just see that relationship blossom even more. So, I was just very surprised to see that in a Wonder Woman book.
Yeah, man, likewise. I thought that was really, really cool how, that was kind of what was going on. Cersei was just disappointed, and she's like, I'm not going to take care of this baby. I'm just not going to do it. That's a pretty bold thing to kind of like put in a comic like this, first issue and everything. We have a character who's just like, I'm a lady, with someone just handed me a baby, like whatever. I'm going to let it, whatever happens. Let me not say anything like too shocking here on the podcast, but whatever happens to it happens to it. It's not my problem. And then she kind of, really sees the strength in Diana and everything is like, really, really, kind of just grows to love her, and take care of her and everything and nurture her. So really, really interesting, really cool. The world building, dude, I love the world building here. I think it's probably the biggest strength of the book. It's just, it's got that vibe of Wonder Woman mythology that I love and all of that. And, brings it up to this different level and, introduces this like weird hell element and stuff to it. And like the magic of Wonder Woman, which is really cool because, she's like a sorceress here. Like, this is just really cool.
Yeah. It's the world of Wonder Woman without Themyscira, without that origin.
Yeah.
So,
it's
cool. A different world, but it's the same world that Wonder Woman lives in, if that makes any sense.
Yep. Yeah. I love this. This is so cool. Let's get into the art. We'll try to make this really quick. We'll go through this fast, but let's talk about the character art. I'm gonna lead with, dude, I love this art. I think it's really, really good. I love the depiction of Wonder Woman here. I love all the secondary characters. I love the Harbingers. They're cool. creepy as hell. They're like bright red and crazy looking. And
Yeah, they kind of reminded me of pterodactyls.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're like big red pterodactyls. And then we have the giant leader. Yeah, this is I love the character art here. I think Wonder Woman looks super cool, especially in that final panel, like when she's getting like her like kind of Amazon infused hell power and everything. Just super, super cool. Really good character art.
I love how they designed Pegasus.
Yeah, dude, Pegasus is wow. That is a cool looking character. Very, very cool.
Yeah.
Bob, let's get into, like this and every other episode that we do. Each book must pass a very intensive background test. It's important to Bob that the book has, added to the storytelling by its backgrounds, and it's something very important to Bob. So, Bob, how did you feel about the backgrounds in this book?
The backgrounds definitely work in this book, especially the panels that they show on the Isle of Hell and their little cave/home. Each panel gets more detailed as the years go by, and I mean more and more stuff is added.
Yeah, those panels are just so cool. They got their little cauldron and God, man, it's so cool. There's all these like little monsters running around and demons and stuff. But yeah, the backgrounds are so cool. They're illuminated so cool because of the light in there and everything. And it gets brighter and brighter as time goes on because there's more lights added as it's more lived in, and there's bookshelves and everything. It's just there's such a evolution there.
And I didn't notice in the final panel because I was too busy reading the comic. But I don't know if you noticed, but in the final panel they show of the cave, they actually have a wood plank floor.
Wow, you're right. Yeah, I didn't notice that.
It goes from, in a couple of pages, it goes from basically a bear cave.
Yeah, it's a cave.
With a cauldron, and that's basically it. To, the back wall is just covered with books. There's a wood floor. There's a nice bed that Diana sleeps in. So yeah, I love the backgrounds in this.
It's cool too because you're saying that, and I'm looking at it right in front of me. It's fun how like the beds evolve and stuff too because they on the opposite ends of the room they got their two beds, and like as time goes on, at first it's just like a rock with like a pillow and a blanket, and then like slowly it gets more and more, and there's candles surrounding it and hanging plants, and it just becomes so illuminated, and man, it just looks so cool. This really looks awesome. I love it.
They go from having just a cauldron to at the end, they basically have a clay oven.
Yeah. So cool. It's so cool how they built all this and let it evolve and just added more and more as time went on. It's so cool. The one panel that I want to talk about really quick before we move on to the next section is that first years ago in the Wild Isle of Hell, thing, and it shows the isle there, and it's in the middle of the ocean, of course, and then it has like this little circular panel of Cersei's, and she's like, I don't know, collecting rocks or doing something. Maybe she's starting to build that cave. I'm not sure. But it just looks so cool, and it's dreary, and the ocean's behind her, and it's just all muddy and water everywhere and stuff. That's a really cool, powerful panel, and then it becomes illuminated whenever Apollo shows up and everything. Just really cool. We get to see like a whole different vibe of Cersei's. She's in these like dark gray blue tones and everything, and then it becomes illuminated whenever Apollo shows up, and just some really good work there. I'm not going to lie, I would expect nothing less from Jordi Belair, and of course we'll get into the colors lastly, but the backgrounds are really, really good here. How about the locations? This thing moves around from Gateway City to the Isle of Hell. And then we have some aerial stuff going on, but that's pretty much where we are. I like the locations a lot in this book. I like how it moves from some extreme places, but it's also not like globetrotting, and throwing too much at us at once. Thought it was really cool. All right, so lastly, Bob, let's talk about the colors. Of course, Jordi Belair on colors here. I already kind of said something about it, so I'm going to let you lead with it.
Yeah, I mean, I echo your sentiment. I mean, at this point, we expect nothing less from Jordi Belair. I mean, just like the cave evolving, I mean, the colors evolve. They go from, the muted, washed-out tones to it starts getting brighter when Apollo shows up to, it really starts getting brighter as the years go on. So I really love the colors. I mean, the colors of Diana's outfit, even when she, smears that blood on her face to make like a mask.
Oh man, I was hoping you would bring that up because that is such a cool little panel there. She's got her war paint on, and with the blood. That's so cool. And I would say, the last little thing I want to say about this book before we either recommend it or don't is the use of the color red. Man, red's really important in this book, and it like plays a character basically. So cool.
Yeah, it does.
The use of red, and it's used in our hero and our villains, so it's really interesting. But yeah, I like this a lot. Really good job from Jordi Belair, but of course it is. So, Bob, the most important question of the podcast is Absolute Wonder Woman 1 enough for you to recommend it to our listeners? Would you suggest they add it to their pool or move on to issue number 2?
For a lack of a better term, absolutely.
Oh man, that was good. I didn't think of that one, but yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I absolutely agree with that. Dude, this book is so metal. This is so good. Yep. This is such a fun take on Wonder Woman. I'm going to say this, and this might be a hot take, and I don't know if you've read this book yet or not, Bob, but did you read Absolute Batman?
I did not.
Okay, so Absolute Batman is good. I liked it. It's a cool vibe, cool depiction of Batman, different take on Batman. It's got some cool art in there and everything. But I'm going to say this, as highly acclaimed and everything as that book is, and it's selling for, big bucks and stuff online now and everything in the secondary market. It's going into all these other printings and everything. This is by far the superior book of the two. This is so good. It's such an easy read. And again, you got Kelly Thompson on there, so we already know Kelly Thompson is going to stand and deliver anytime. Yeah. It's like Kelly Thompson just cannot be lazy on a book. She's not going to phone anything in. No. I don't think it's possible for her. I think that again, dude, you could be like, Kelly Thompson, I want you to write like a 12-issue miniseries on a leaf falling from a tree, and she'd be like, okay, cool, no problem. I'll make sure that everyone cries at the end. She just delivers.
Like you said, a crack in the sidewalk.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be anything because the subject doesn't matter because she just knows how to write it because she's that good. Yeah. She's teamed up with some really, really good people here. So yeah, I second that. Yeah, please, for the love of God, go out and buy this if you can find a copy because I think it's sold out as well. Dude, this is such a good book. I don't know. Go get a second or third printing. Do whatever you got to do to read this comic because it's really, really good. You're going to want this in your collection. Don't sell it, for short-term gain. Hold on to this book is all I'm going to say. I will definitely be holding on to my copy. With that being said, Bob, again, mini episode, we're at 43 minutes, but we do have to pick the book for next week. So we're going to take just a quick 2-second break and we'll be right back to announce the book of next week. Hey, and we're back with this long mini episode of the All New, All Different Number One Comics podcast, right? I think at this point, we're hitting 44 minutes. It's longer than a mini episode, but it's shorter.
It's a maxi mini.
Right? It's a shorter regular episode, but yeah. Looks like we'll be covering Sectaris from Oni Press. The new number 1 comes out next week. Of course, if you guys don't know, Sectaris, a 1985 toy line that was turned into an animated series and Marvel Comics released some comics, but now the license is moved over to Ani, and we're getting a whole new comic book of that. So really excited about this one, Bob. But yeah, that looks like the book we'll be covering next week. And with that being said, thank you guys so much for tuning in, checking out this special episode of the All New, All Different #1 Comics podcast. This might be the last one before Halloween, so we'll go ahead and call it our Halloween episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week for Sectaris.